Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has delivered a powerful declaration about Africa's emerging role as a global powerhouse, boldly stating, "The future of this world is African." In a stirring address at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly, President Mahama emphasized the continent's dramatic demographic transformation, citing UN projections that paint a picture of Africa's unprecedented influence. According to this organization's own projections, by the year 2050, more than 25% of the world's population is expected to come from the African continent, he announced. Additionally, by 2051, one-third of all young people aged between 15 and 24 will be residing on the African continent. With characteristic emphasis, President Mahama repeated his central message. Allow me to say this once again, a little louder for those of you in the back. The future is African. President Mahama contextualized Africa's current position by acknowledging its historical exclusion from global decision-making. He noted that Africa's overall participation in the organization's founding was minimal and relatively unimportant, referencing how only 4 African nations were among the 51 founding members of the United Nations in 1945. The president positioned Africa not merely as a beneficiary of global development, but as an active driver of transformation. He mentioned that Africa is a catalyst for human potential and development, as well as for economic reform and ecological stability. Africa is a catalyst for systemic change, President Mahama noted.
Africa's overall participation in the organization's founding was minimal and relatively unimportant. That's because before all the other talks and meetings, representatives from a group of 14 nations gathered in Berlin for a series of discussions that began in 1884 and which led to the partitioning and formal colonization of the African continent, which is also called the Scramble for Africa. It has famously been written that past is prologue. Well, in the past, the majority of the 54 nations that now comprise Africa were never offered a seat at the table where plans for a new world order were being drawn. But, Madam President, as fate would have it, the tables are turning, and Africa's role in the authorship of whatever is yet to come for this world is going to be huge, and it will be consequential. According to this organization's own projections, by the year 2050, more than 25% of the world's population is expected to come from the African continent. Additionally, by 2050, one-third of all young people aged between 15 to 24 will be residing on the African continent. So you see, the future of this world is African. Allow me to say this once again a little louder for those of you in the back. The future is African. Already today, Africa is a catalyst for human potential and development, as well as for economic reform and ecological stability. Africa is a catalyst for systemic change. If this reality, which is fact-based and straightforward, seems provocative or unsettling, perhaps it's because you are viewing it through the lens of centuries of filters, colonialism and imperialism, and the resulting implicit bias.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama also delivered a stark condemnation of the international community's response to ongoing humanitarian crisis, particularly in Gaza and Sudan, and called for immediate action and honest dialogue about global conflicts.
For nearly 2 years and for the fear of reprisals, we here in this General Assembly have been playing hide and seek with language to find the right words to help us avoid or excuse what we all know is taking place in Gaza. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter what you call it. If it looks like a duck, it swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, well, then it must be a duck. The crimes in Gaza must stop. The crimes in Gaza must stop. Madam President, I also want to draw particular attention to the conflict in Sudan, which this body has described as the world's largest humanitarian crisis. 12 million people have had to flee their homes. And when we speak of migration, we refer to the 12 million new Sudanese refugees, whom we as a global community should be willing to assist in much the same way that many member nations readily assisted new refugees coming out of Ukraine. Let's dispense with the euphemisms and dog whistles and speak frankly. It is not a mystery that when leaders of Western nations complain of their migration problems, they are often referring to immigrants from the global south. But many of those immigrants are climate refugees. And interestingly, the global north emits 75% more greenhouse gases than the global south. However, the effects of climate change are more severe in the global south because we lack the resources to address them effectively. And so when the desert encroaches on our villages and towns and they become unlivable, we are forced to flee.